US Vice President Mike Pence and his wife have received the Pfizer-BioNTech coronavirus vaccine in front of TV cameras as part of a safety information campaign. More than 310,000 people have died with coronavirus in America. President Macron has released this message from self-isolation after he was diagnosed positive for COVID-19 on Thursday. He said he had few symptoms but was still working and promised to be transparent about his condition. The World Health Organization says it has ordered a further 2 billion doses of various coronavirus vaccines intended to help vulnerable communities. It says the first deliveries will take place in the first quarter of 2021. And more than 300 schoolboys abducted in northern Nigeria a week ago are expected to be reunited with their families within hours. The circumstances of their release remain unclear.
Vice President Mike Pence received a COVID-19 vaccine shot at a televised event today. He's the most senior member of the Trump administration known to have gotten the shot. Officials are trying to strike a balance between bolstering public confidence in the vaccine while still avoiding the perception that members of the government are being given priority. The National Security Council has said members of Congress would receive vaccines in accordance with protocols for ensuring continuity of government, and lawmakers have been urged to take it. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said they would get their shots in the coming days. The first batch of 2.9 million doses is expected to be fully distributed by Sunday. About 40 million doses are expected to be available this month. The Supreme Court today dismissed a challenge to President Trump's plan to exclude undocumented immigrants from congressional reapportionment. The court's conservative majority said it was premature to rule on the case because it's unclear whether the outgoing administration could implement the policy. The plan, if implemented, was expected to shift House seats from Democratic-led cities with large numbers of immigrants to rural Republican-leaning areas. The court's liberal justices called the plan unconstitutional and said that congressional representation has historically been based on residency rather than citizenship. And we report exclusively that there's disagreement within the government over President Trump's order banning Americans from investing in companies with ties to China's military. People familiar with the matter say Treasury officials want affiliates and subsidiaries of those companies left out of the ban to avoid spooking markets. State and defense officials say excluding them would create loopholes. One person said officials predict the stalemate will only be broken once President Trump weighs in.
We start with the coronavirus situation here in Tokyo. The cumulative total of cases has surpassed 50,000. With the new year fast approaching, many people are concerned pressure on the healthcare system will only grow. Tokyo reported 664 new coronavirus cases on Friday after seeing record-breaking numbers the day before. The Tokyo governor is asking residents to work together to prevent the further spread of the virus during the upcoming holidays.
Tokyo relies on three things to protect the lives of residents. We need to prevent deaths, serious cases, and the collapse of the medical system.
With serious cases going up, the Tokyo government has raised its alert for the healthcare system to the highest level. One medical expert told NHK infections are spreading faster than expected and could stretch the city's healthcare system beyond the brink. He says hospitals that provide specialty treatment are now caring for people with COVID-19.
So, for example, if you find out you have cancer, if you find that you have heart problems, the hospitals you would go to are treating coronavirus patients. Now, routine treatment for other life-threatening ailments is being compromised.
He stressed simple measures like washing your hands, staying home, and wearing a mask could make a major difference. The virus is also spreading outside Tokyo. The national tally for Friday stands at over 2,800. More than 194,000 people have tested positive in Japan. The Japanese government is taking steps to begin vaccinating residents against COVID-19 as early as February. The government accepted the first application for vaccine approval on Friday. It came from U.S. pharmaceutical giant Pfizer. The company has an agreement with Japan to supply enough doses for 60 million people by the end of June.
We will thoroughly examine the efficacy and safety of the vaccine. We will do all we can to ensure that we can start performing inoculations as soon as possible once it's approved.
The government plans to secure special freezers and dry ice to preserve the vaccine, which must be stored at around -70 degrees Celsius. Two other pharmaceutical firms, AstraZeneca and Moderna, also have deals to supply Japan with their vaccines. The health ministry informed local governments of its distribution plans on Friday. Officials are aiming to start inoculating medical workers in late February. The elderly will be next in line starting around late March. Jabs will be available to the general public in April, with priority given to those with pre-existing conditions. Now, the critical 3 weeks set by the Japanese government as a focused fight against the coronavirus are over. But with nationwide cases at an all-time high, it appears more time and effort may be needed. NHK World's Kurabayashi Tomoko explains.
The virus reproduction rate, known as the R value, refers to the average number of people that one infected person will spread the virus to. When the figure is above 1, an outbreak is in place. When it is below 1, the outbreak is being contained. Even after the government's calls for the public to take extra precautions during the 3-week period, the nationwide rate at the end of that period stood at 1.11. NHK's numbers are based on simple calculations with guidance from an expert. Other studies can involve more detailed data. Tokyo and the prefectures of Aichi and Osaka are over 1, indicating infections continue to be on the rise. An expert says there is a tendency for urban areas to have more people whose infection routes are unknown.
The number of infected people whose infection routes cannot be traced is now increasing, and cluster measures that were taken are no longer enough. It creates a negative spiral.
Infections are spreading to rural areas from major cities. In Hiroshima Prefecture, cases began to rise sharply around late November. The daily tally has exceeded 100 twice so far this week. In Hiroshima, the reproduction rate stood at 1.5 on Wednesday. At least 24 clusters were confirmed there between late November and Friday. Nearly half originated in restaurants and host or hostess clubs, and among people dining in groups.
As people move around, infections in big cities are likely to spread to core cities in the countryside. Then that spreads gradually throughout a prefecture.
The Japanese government recently halted its domestic tourism stimulus campaign from December 28th to January 11th. And experts are urging people to hold back from travel during the upcoming year-end holidays, evidence that this fight is far from over.
Next, record-breaking snowfall continues to down power lines and close off traffic arteries in northern and central Japan with little relief in sight. For some, it's meant many hours stuck on the highway without food and with nowhere to go. About 2,000 vehicles were stranded Thursday on this expressway linking Tokyo and Niigata. Workers are slowly digging out drivers. Members of Japan's self-defense forces are handing out food and blankets to those still waiting.
I was stuck for about 36 hours. I didn't have water, food, or a clue of what's going on.
I was really in trouble. No food, no drinks. I had to eat snow.
Some who had been stuck for hours were taken to the hospital. The expressway operator says it hopes to have traffic flowing again by Saturday with the help of the SDF and local police. Weather officials are urging people to stay on the alert. They're forecasting more snowfall across northeastern and central parts of the nation through Sunday. A Japanese shipping company has released details of what led a vessel to run aground in Mauritius and release about 1,000 tons of oil. Mitsui OSK Lines chartered the freighter that struck a coral reef in July, creating an environmental disaster. The company released findings of an internal investigation on Friday. It said the vessel moved closer to the coast in order to get a mobile phone signal. But the crew reportedly used a nautical chart that didn't have a scale accurate enough to confirm its distance from the coast and the depth of the water. It also said a crew member failed to keep watch, both visually and by radar. Mitsui O.S.K. Line says it'll invest about $5 million to implement preventive measures. That includes training crew members to operate electronic nautical charts and stepping up crew support. The company announced earlier this year they would also be pledging millions of dollars toward the environmental cleanup in Mauritius. Moving now to a political scandal involving Japan's former prime minister. Prosecutors are thought to be investigating one of Abe Shinzo's secretaries for failing to report revenue and payments related to annual parties held for supporters. Now, the former prime minister has suggested he'll personally provide an explanation to the Diet after investigators have reached a conclusion. The parties were held annually on the eve of government-funded gatherings for cherry blossom viewings. Abe's office is suspected of putting tens of thousands of dollars toward the parties when fees collected from participants failed to cover costs. But there are no official financial reports. When asked about the parties in November last year, then Prime Minister Abe told the Diet his office didn't pay for or make money from them. He said there was no need to file a financial report. As the investigation progressed, his political opposition came to suspect Abe made false statements and demanded further explanation. Now it looks like they'll get it. Abe told reporters on Friday he'll sincerely address the issue in the Diet once investigators reach a conclusion. The leader of the largest opposition party reacted to the news.
This is about lying to the Diet, so it would be ideal for him to be accused of perjury. But those sorts of arrangements are left to party officials in charge of Diet affairs.
Japan's top government spokesperson says decisions related to managing the Diet should be left up to the Diet itself. More than 300 schoolboys in Nigeria have been released after being abducted last week in an attack on their school. An armed group stormed the school in northern Nigeria last Friday and fled with the captive students. Media outlets, including the AFP news agency, reported Islamic extremist group Boko Haram claimed responsibility.
At the moment, 344 of the students have been handed over to security agencies. I think we have recovered most of the boys, not all of them.
The governor said the students suffered no injuries and will have medical checks before being reunited with their families. He indicated their school will reopen with increased security. As we have been reporting, people in many parts of Japan have been dealing with a huge dumping of snow this week. Our meteorologist Jonathan O has the outlook for the weekend in our World Weather Report.
Hello, it was another snowy day for the northern areas of Japan as we went through Friday with cool weather starting off the morning hours, and we are going to still see snow as a part of the story along the Sea of Japan side of the nation as we go into Saturday. Yes, we do have the low pressure system and a cold front pushing on through, but we'll still have that flow to where snow is expected to Sapporo for Saturday, Sunday, and even into Monday. Tokyo, Osaka, and Fukuoka looking at partly cloudy skies, temperatures around 10 degrees as we go through the next few days. Meanwhile, up toward the northern areas of Europe, we do have a system that's rolling through, a low pressure system with a cold front pushing through, and that's going to bring a wet scenario as we go through the weekend to places like the United Kingdom and also even into the western portions of the continent. We're talking about rain into London for Saturday and also into Monday with some thunderstorms. Paris also looking a bit wet. Vienna looking at highs at around 5 or so, with Rome staying dry, highs in the mid-teens as we go through the weekend.